Thank you for an extraordinary session. I want to just remind everyone here that, again, there are three central objectives that we hope each of us will come away with today. One is, what is the one thing individually that you will want to do different, or differently as a consequence of being here? The second is, what is the one change, concrete, specific, and achievable, that you would want to accomplish for your institution? And the third is, what is the one step towards a more equitable society here in Baltimore that you can work toward and that we can work toward? We're going to also be asking to collect those pledges. In the back of your program, there's a form, because we will follow up with you on those. Our next presenter, James Page, I had the opportunity to meet shortly after he came to Baltimore from Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And since the time being here, I've gotten to know James. I've also had the opportunity to chair a medical school task force together with him. His entire career has been linked with healthcare, health systems, and both diversity and equity, and developing health systems that are more equitable for those who utilize them. He's had an extraordinary career. We're deeply honored that he is here at Hopkins. He is Vice President of Johns Hopkins Medicine, Chief Diversity Officer, and will be talking about Beyond Diversity. James?
Just going to make a quick switch here, so give me a second. You still there? Yes. Okay, there we go. So I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to do a TED Talk for here in Baltimore. It was a lot of fun. As I did the TED Talk, I'm very family oriented, and my kiddos and my wife came down, and my parents came down, and they're from the Midwest. And when I started the TED Talk, I wanted to tell them about just the uniqueness of raising kiddos. My wife and I have 3 kiddos. The oldest is 18 years old. She'll be attending Spelman next year. The youngest, he's, Spelman folks? And the youngest is 13 years old. It's a boy. God gave us 2 girls and a boy. We thought we were amazing parents. We thought we were skilled. My wife and I were going to give classes to all of our children that had boys that just did not know how to raise them well. And then God gave us a boy, and we realized we were not that good of a parent. We just had girls. So we lived in Colorado for a couple of years. And while we were in Colorado, my wife and I went out to dinner. And I don't know how many of you have been in Colorado, but really dry air there. Really dry air. We had humidifiers running all over the house. And the reason we did that, of course, was keep the air moist. Well, my son was about 4 or 5 years old, and the humidifier ran dry, and he thought he would help the sitter out. And he refilled the humidifier for the sitter, which you'd think would be a great thing. But he refilled it with the easiest thing for little boys to fill a humidifier with. Now, after cooking and running for several hours, we got quite the gift when we came back home. So, I'm here to talk to you about diversity and inclusion. Diversity is one of those things that can be a tremendous asset to organizations if they manage it well. However, if organizations cannot manage it well, it can be a big burden. On December 9th, 2015, the Supreme Court took up the case of Fisher versus the University of Texas. Now, during that case, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia made a comment about his thoughts regarding the success of African Americans going to the University of Texas. I'm going to play that for you.
There are those who contend that it does not benefit African Americans to get them into the University of Texas where they do not do well, as opposed to having them go to a less advanced school, a slower track school where they do well.
Now, after Justice Scalia made this comment, a lot of people were upset. I was upset. I'm a University of Texas grad. My wife and I received our master's degree from UT Austin. A lot of folks were upset. But what's equally disturbing are the ways in which Justice Scalia's thinking is correct. You see, our thinking is made up of our previous experiences, those viewpoints, our perceptions, the people that we hang around with. These help create our thinking, our viewpoints. Now, some of us are able to get a lot of information inside of our boxes. Leonardo da Vinci stated that all of our knowledge has its perceptions and origins. Has its origins and perceptions. If you take a look at this on the screen, what do you see? A lot of you are going to say you see a box up here. But really, there's not a box up here. What you see are 8 circles, and these 8 circles are arranged in such a way that our mind finds a previous experience, something that we're familiar with, and fills in the gap. And that gap is used to help define what we see at this moment. Now, some of us are able to get a tremendous amount of information inside of these boxes. Others are not. Now, if you take someone like Justice Scalia, someone who was born in 1936, who sat on the Supreme Court of the United States, who went to Georgetown for undergraduate, Harvard Law, whose father was a professor, whose mother was a teacher, his perceptions are going to be a lot different than someone like myself. These perceptions are so critical to understand. We look at what it takes when folks go through these knowledge shifts. What is it that we're looking for? I'm going to put a couple of images up here for you based on your perceptions. Now, these images are going to be roles, jobs, and I want you to think about people in these images. I want you to think, how old are they? What's their hair color? What do they wear to work? What's their skin color? What's their height? The first one I'm going to put up here is a CEO. You got an image in your head? Now, I could go and poll each of you and ask each of you, what do you think a CEO looks like? But I want you to get an image in your head. What I did is I went to Yahoo, Google, and Bing, and I typed CEO. I went to image search. I grabbed a capture of the screenshot, and I'm putting it on the screen. Here's what came up. What do we see when we look at these images? Does this match the image inside of your head? What's missing? A lot of things are missing. But unfortunately for a lot of people, this is not that far off. Now, we could do the next one. We could say student. What do we think of when we're talking about a student? How do they look? Their age, their ethnicity, their gender. What do they wear? Same thing. Went to Yahoo, Google, Bing, typed student in, and here's what came up. We have to ask ourselves, what message do these images send? What message does it send to that little black boy that aspires to go to Harvard University and types in student and sees this up here? What message does that send to that little Asian girl that wants to be a CEO and types CEO and gets that previous image? What messages are we sending to our future? We go to the next one, we think about a doctor. We're at Johns Hopkins University, but I want you to really think about a doctor. What do they wear? How old are they? What's their gender? What's their ethnicity? Here's what came up. Does this match the image that most people think of? Does it match the image that's inside of your head? What do you see? What's missing when you look at this? Now I'm going to say that there's one guy up here that really does not like these results. He's right here. He's flicking us off because he's really upset about these results. Now, be aware that I did not put these images up here. I just hit print screen and this is what came up. But the fact is that this is what our society thinks of when they think of these roles. If you understand Google's search algorithm, you understand that they are built based on what people click on when they go to these images. Professional athlete. Okay, we're going to play with this one then since you giggle so much. Male or female? Tall or short? Old or young? Feels like I'm forgetting something. Black or white? White. Okay, here's what came up. Again, are we surprised? Does this match how society sees these roles? What message does this send about the potential of our future? What's missing? Now, when we look through these, it's really important to understand that while there was an attempt at diversity, there's a clear message that's being sent. Yes, we have cheating Tom Brady up here, and we have Bruce Lee. We've got our Asian, Bruce Lee. We've got Serena Williams up here somewhere. But the fact is that there's a clear message that's being sent. Now, the next two things I'm going to put up here are not careers, but they're people. First one is white male. Think of the image. What are they wearing? How do they look? How are they presented? Again, same thing. Yahoo, Google, Bing, put it up. Screenshot. Here's what came up. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some very dangerous individuals up here, extremely dangerous people up here. But also, we have like Brad Pitt up here twice because he's like a super white male, I guess. So we've got to have him up here multiple times. But the fact is that for the most part, a clean-cut looking group of individuals. So we've done white males, so now we need to do black males. Here's what came up. I'm going to let you look at that for a second. I'm going to highlight a few of them just in case you don't see what I'm seeing. What are we seeing? What message does this send? Now, in the sake of full disclosure, I'm going to admit that this picture right here, I took off my head and I put someone else's head up there because I wouldn't want me to, it wouldn't be professional to have my body all up like that. But the fact is, what's the message that's being sent? Hypersexualized, absolutely. What are we telling our future when they see images up here like this? What are we saying to that little black boy that goes to Google and wants to understand, how am I represented? What are we saying to that little white girl that goes to Google that wants to understand what's it like to be a black male, and they get this when they pull up and search? Are we creating the kind of future that we desire? So, we must begin to think beyond these boxes. What we have to understand is that these viewpoints, this confined box, the problem with this type of thinking that Justice Scalia spoke of is that it is too narrow. It is too confining. It does not allow us to be the type of folks that we want to be. We have to push, we have to make ourselves think beyond the confines of these small boxes. I decided to test out this theory, and I wanted to understand what are the universities in the United States that had the highest African American graduation rates. What came up were Harvard with 97%, Princeton at 97%, and Yale at 98%. Each of these organizations have a 99% placement rate for those African Americans that graduate from those universities. A lot different than what we heard when we consider what Justice Scalia started us off with. We also need to start to think about the future in this country. If we look right now, last year, or in 2014, the public school systems in the United States became a majority-minority institution in total. In 2044, the United States will become a majority-minority country. These boxes that I've been speaking of are too narrow. We will not succeed if we do not push beyond these narrow confines. These are the reasons, this narrow type of thinking is a reason that Justice Scalia is correct, but also the reason that we have to keep pushing and make sure that his type of thinking is not the prominent way that we prepare ourselves. Why is this important? You see, either directly or indirectly, this type of thinking leads to some dangerous consequences. It leads to ideas that African Americans are great athletes, but poor family folks. That Asians are STEM wizards, but poor drivers. That gays are fashion forward, but unfit to serve in the military. That women are poor money managers, but excellent family caregivers. That white men can't jump and are great leaders. We have to push beyond our narrow thinking that many of us have. As I said previously, my wife and I both are graduates of the University of Texas at Austin, where we received our master's degrees. My parents raised 5 black boys from nothingness to see each of these boys obtain their master's and undergraduate degrees from fast-track universities, as Justice Scalia put it, while they also obtained their master's and bachelor's degrees as working parents. Yes, give it up to them. But now we circle back. And we start to talk about that kid in the humidifier again. And I get concerned. I get concerned that people are not going to be able to see beyond the box, to see the amazing kid that he is. After Trayvon's death, I had a friend come to me and say, James, you don't have to worry about your son ending up in Trayvon's situation because of the titles that you hold and the connections that you have. But what my friend did not understand is that I've been followed in stores. What my friend did not understand is I've had guns pointed at me by both police officers and strangers. What my friend did not understand is that I have watched my mother harassed as she has unloaded groceries from her car to take them in her house. What my friend does not understand is that I have seen police tanks roll in front of my childhood home, making every resident feel like they are in a war zone and not a major United States city. What my friend did not understand is that this is not me representing someone else's experience. This was and still is my life. So I'm concerned about raising a black boy in this country that I love. I fear that he will be stereotyped and have to go through what I went through or worse. And while I tell him that he has to hold his head high, pull his shoulders back, while I tell my son that he needs to look another man in the eye, and that I tell my son he has to choose his words deliberately and speak clearly. I tell my son that a firm handshake is worth its weight in gold. I tell my son to always wear a belt at his waist. I tell my son to respect all women, and if I'm not around, find a person in uniform to provide assistance. And I tell my son that while he begins every single day with his head held high and his shoulders back, you end every day on your knees with your back bent, thanking God for the advantages that you are given. But I struggle with the juxtaposing message that my son must learn. That still in America, in 2016, being black in America means laughing when you're not tickled. It means dancing when you don't like the music. It means playing the game when you want to cry. It means bowing your head when you want to run. It means shutting up when you want to cry help. So I struggle that I have to tell my son, to bow his head, that I have to tell my son to avert his eyes, that I have to tell my son to close his mouth. When he should be able to walk up to that other man and look him square in the eyes and say to him that I am James Edward Barty Page III, and I am still not your target practice. But I have to tell him, don't say anything, son. Just come home. Just come home and give your dad a big hug and tell me about your problems and tell me about your fears. Just always come home. So we circle back to where we started, considering the words of the Supreme Court of the United States. And we must begin to set goals. Goals that will help our community, our city of Baltimore, our country, our world to be more accepting of diversity, to be more accepting of true diversity. And setting these goals will not be easy. We will falter, we will stumble, and we will fail. But a worthy goal is always worth pursuing. I had to explain to my 3 children what Justice Scalia said. Those words that he spoke. My son listened and he went up to his room. He sat down for a few minutes in his room and he came back down and sat down on the couch next to me. Began to talk to me about Justice Scalia's comments. And my amazing, beautiful black boy, read me a quote from a Baltimore native and one of my fraternity brothers, Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. Here's what he said.
A child born to a black mother in a state like Mississippi has exactly the same rights as a white baby born to the wealthiest person in the United States. It's not true, but I challenge anyone to say it is not a goal worth fighting for. A quote from Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall.
Thank you very much.